Chapter 1. The water was so cold it felt like fire. That was the last thing I remembered from my first life, the crushing weight of the river pressing against my chest, the silken strands of my hair tangling around my face like funeral veils, and above me, the blurred shape of Ling Yufeng leaning over the bridge railing, his face a mask of perfect, serene cruelty. He had not shouted. He had not reached for me. He had simply watched as the current pulled me under, his hands clasped behind his back as if he were admiring a passing cloud. I woke gasping, my body jerking upright as though I had been yanked from the depths. My hand flew to my throat, and I could have sworn I felt river water still lodged in my lungs. But the air I sucked into my chest was dry and warm, heavy with the scent of dried herbs and old dust that I was in the servants' quarters. The small, cramped room with the cracked window frame and the thin mattress that always left my back aching. Morning light filtered through the rice paper, casting a soft yellow glow on the floor. I read at my hands. They were pale and smooth, the hands of a girl who had not yet known the weight of years of humiliation. No calluses from scrubbing floors. No scars from the silver hairpins Lady Jiang had thrown at my head. I was 19 again. I was still Shinju, the merchant's daughter who had married above her station. And Ling Yufeng still had the power to smile at me without revulsion. That the sounds from the courtyard reached me before I could gather my wits. A flurry of footsteps, the urgent murmur of servants' voices, and then the sharp, commanding tone of Lady Jiang ba king orders. My mother-in-law's voice right apart articulate our shrillness that she reserved for disasters. It was a sound I remembered well. Shinju. Shinju, are you still abed like a lazy cow? Get out here at once. I rose on unsteady legs. My limbs felt foreign, as though they belonged to someone else. I walked to the door and slid it open. The corridor was filled with maids rushing back and forth, their faces pale with fright. One of them bumped into me and did not even pause to apologize. In my past life, would have been furious at the disrespect. Now, I simply read at the chaos unfolding around me. Lianxiang, my personal maid, came running toward me. Her round face was flushed, her eyes wide. Mistress. Mistress, the young master has returned. He has lost his post. The censor's memorial to the emperor was accepted. They say he is to be stripped of his rank by the end of the month. I read at her. The words echoed in my head, but they did not spark the same panic I remembered from the first time I had heard them. In that other life, I had cried out in shock. I had clutched my chest and begged the heavens for mercy. I had run to my husband's side, ready to offer him comfort, to promise him my unwavering support. But this time, I felt nothing but a cold, patient stillness. Like a snake coiled in the grass, waiting. Where is my husband? I asked, my voice steady. Lianxiang blinked at me as though she had expected a different reaction. He is in the main hall with the old mistress, she said. He is furious. They are talking about selling the silver from the ancestral shrine. I nodded and walked toward the main hall. My steps were measured, unhurried. I could hear Lady Jiang's voice growing louder as I approached, her words laced with hysteria. How could this happen? My son, a man of such talent, brought low by a pack of jealous curs. And that wife of yours is nowhere to be found. Does she not realize that her husband is in crisis? I stepped through the doorway. The main hall was a grand room, the walls lined with scrolls and hanging silk paintings that had been purchased with my father's silver. The room was dominated by the revered table where we took our meals. Ling Yufeng was pacing before it, his robes disheveled, his hair escaping from its jade pin. He was still handsome, even in his fury. The sharp lines of his jaw, the ink-black depths of his eyes, they had been my undoing once. I had loved him with a devotion so fierce it had blinded me to everything else. Lady Jiang sat on the cushioned chair by the window, fanning herself with a painted silk fan. She was a small, sharp-boned woman with a permanent sneer etched into her features. When she saw me enter, her eyes narrowed. Finally, she snapped. You have deigned to join us. Your husband is on the brink of ruin, and you have been lazing about in your chambers like a pampered princess. I said nothing. I simply walked to the center of the room and stood still, my hands folded before me. Ling Yufeng turned to look at me. His face was a study in frustration and desperation. He had not yet shed the last traces of his arrogance, but I could see the cracks forming. The loss of his rank was a blow he had not anticipated. He had been so confident in his schemes, so certain that his position was unassailable. "Jur," he said, coming toward me. He took my hands in his, and the gesture made my skin crawl. In my past life, I had melted at his touch. Now, I simply endured it, my face a placid mask. I am in great trouble. My enemies have conspired against me. The censor's accusations are baseless, but the emperor has been swayed by his lies. If I do not act quickly, I will lose everything. I looked into his eyes. I remembered the way they had looked on the bridge. Cold. Empty. Watching me sink up. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice soft as he squeezed my hands. "My uncle in the capital is powerful, but he is also cautious. He will not move on my behalf unless he sees a reason to. There is another option. Lord Luo, the Minister of Rights. He has long held influence at court. And he has expressed an interest in you, Jur. Your beauty, your grace, he has noticed them. If you were to go to him, to become his concubine, he would have the power to overturn this verdict. He could save me. He could save us all." It was the same speech. Word for word. I remembered it so vividly that it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. In my first life, I had wept when he said those words. I had clung to him and promised I would do anything to help him, even if it meant sacrificing my own dignity. I had gone to Lord Luo, a man older than my own father, and I had allowed myself to be used as a BA or gaining chip. And what had it cost me? Everything. My reputation, my self-respect, my very life. I pulled my hands from his grasp. Ling Yufeng's expression flickered with surprise. "Jur," he said, his voice uncertain. "What is the meaning of this?" "Lord Luo is 72 years old," I said calmly. "He has a wife, 6 concubines, and more grandchildren than I can count. You want me to go to him? You want me to be another trinket in his collection?" Ling Yufeng's face keened. "Do not speak to me in that tone. This is not a trivial matter. My future is at stake. Our future is at stake." "You speak of our future," I said, "but you have never thought of me as a partner, Yufeng. You think of me as a tool. A means to an end. And now that you are in trouble, you are willing to sell me to the highest bidder." Lady Jiang rose from her chair, her face contorted with fury. "How do you speak to your husband that way? You ungrateful wretch. My family took you in when your father died and your brother abandoned you. We gave you a roof, a name, a position. And now you refuse to lift a finger to help when we need you most." "Your family took my father's silver," I said quietly, turning to face her. "You took his money and used it to buy this manor, to pay off your debts, to fund your son's ambitions. And in return, you treated me like a servant. Do you think I do not remember the way you spoke to me when you thought I could not hear? Do you think I forgot the nights I spent in the kitchen, preparing your meals while you dined with your friends?" Lady Jiang's face went pale with rage. She pointed a trembling finger at me. You insolent creature. Yufeng, do not let her speak to me this way." Ling Yufeng stepped forward. His composure had cracked, and beneath it, I could see the true man. Petty. Cruel. Terrified of losing his status. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. "That you will not speak to my mother that way," he hissed. "You will apologize, and then you will prepare yourself to go to Lord Luo's residence tonight. I have already sent word to him. The palanquin will arrive at sunset." I met his gaze. In the other life, I had wept. I had begged him to reconsider. I had allowed myself to be broken by his anger. This time, I smiled. It was a small, cold smile, and I saw it unsettle him. "Let go of me," I said. He did not. Instead, his grip tightened. You are my wife. You will obey me. By law, I said, you have lost your official position. You are no longer a man of rank. You have no power to compel me to do anything. If you hold me against my will, you will be committing a crime, and I will scream so loudly that every neighbor in this district will hear me. He froze. The threat was real, and he knew it. The Ling family's reputation was already in tatters. If it were known that he had attempted to sell his wife to an elderly minister, the scandal would destroy whatever remained of his standing. That he released my arm, stepping back. His face was a mask of shock and rage. What has gotten into you? You have never been like this. Perhaps I have always been like this, I said. You simply chose not to see it. I turned and walked toward the door. Lady Zhang's voice followed me, shrill and furious. Where do you think you are going? You cannot leave this house. You have nowhere to go. You have no money, no family, no prospects. I paused at the threshold. I have nothing, I agreed. And that is precisely why I am free. I walked through the corridor, past the ring servants, past the gawking maids. I could hear Ling Yufeng shouting behind me, his voice cracking with rage. I heard the crash of something breaking, probably a vase or a teacup. It did not matter that I went to my chambers and gathered what little I owned. A change of clothes, a few coins I had hidden in the hem of my robe, and a small jade pendant that had belonged to my mother. It was not much, but it was mine. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw Yanxiang standing in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. Stepmistress, she whispered. Please do not go. Where will you stay? What will you eat? Yanxiang, I said gently, I have to go. If I stay here, they will destroy me. I have already seen what they are capable of. She hesitated, then reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small cloth pouch. She pressed it into my hand. I have been saving this, she said. It is not much. But it will help you get root. I opened the pouch. It was filled with copper coins and a few small pieces of silver. It was likely her entire life savings. Yanxiang, I cannot take this. You must, she insisted, her voice trembling. You have always been kind to me, mistress. When the old mistress would scold me, you would defend me. When the young master would yell at me, you would speak on my behalf. I have never been able to repay you. Please. Take it. Take it and go. I looked at her. In my past life, she had been sold off by Lady Jiang after I was no longer useful. I had never seen her again. But now, I had the chance to change that. Thank you, I said, tucking the pouch into my robe. I will remember this, Lianxiang. I swear to you, I will not forget you. She gave me a watery smile. Go. Quickly. Before they come looking for you. I left the Ling Manor through the servants' entrance. The gate was small, hidden behind a thicket of bamboo. I slipped through it and emerged onto the bustling street beyond. The city was alive with the noise of commerce and daily life. Merchants hawked their residential from stalls, children ran through the crowd laughing, and women in colorful robes chatted at the wells. It was a world I had forgotten in my years of imprisonment. The sights and sounds overwhelmed me, and for a moment, I felt dizzy. I walked. I did not know where I was going. I simply knew that I had to put as much distance as possible between myself and the Ling Manor. I walked until my legs ached and my throat was parched. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the heat of the day pressed down on me. That I found myself on a bridge. The same bridge. The one that would one day be the site of my death. That I leaned against the railing and looked down at the water. It was calm, glinting in the afternoon light. I remembered the cold. The darkness. The silence. I had died on this bridge. And now, I was standing on it again, alive and free. The thought filled me with a strange, fierce joy. I had survived. I had escaped the fate Ling Yufeng had planned for me. And now, I had a second chance. But what would I do with it? I had no money, no family, no connections. I was a woman alone in a world that had little use for women alone. As I stood there, a memory surfaced. My father, Shin Shou, had been a merchant. He had been a shrewd and successful businessman before the Ling family's scheming had destroyed him. He had taught me things when I was a child. He had taught me to read ledgers, to understand the flow of goods and silver, to spot a dishonest deal from a mile away. Those lessons had been buried beneath years of marital servitude, but they were still there. I straightened up and took a deep breath. I was a merchant's daughter. I had the mind for business. I had a sharp tongue and a sharper eye. And I had nothing left to lose. That I walked off the bridge and headed toward the commercial district. The streets were crowded, but I navigated them with a growing sense of purpose. I needed a place to stay, a way to earn money, and a plan for the future. A voice called out behind me. Mistress. Mistress Shen. I turned, riled. A young woman was running toward me, clutching a cloth bundle to her chest. It took me a moment to recognize her. It was Lian Xiang. Mistress, she gasped, catching her breath. I followed you. I saw you leave, and I could not let you go alone. Lian Xiang, what are you doing? You will be punished if they find out you helped me. I do not see a re, she said fiercely. I have already packed my things. I am coming with you. I have no family, no one who will miss me. And I would rather serve a kind mistress than a cruel one. I read at her, my eyes stinging. In my past life, I had been surrounded by servants who read me or resented me. Lian Xiang had been the only one who had shown me genuine kindness, and I had not been able to save her. Now, she was offering me her loyalty again. Are you certain? I asked. That she nodded firmly. I am certain, mistress. I reached out and took her hand. Then we will do this together. We will find a way to survive. We walked through the city together, two women with nothing to our names. I had no idea what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid that the sun was setting by the time we reached the outskirts of the city. The buildings grew smaller and more dilapidated, and the crowds thinned. I was tired, hungry, and bon-weary, but I forced myself to keep walking. We came upon a small inn at the side of the road. It was a humble place, with a creaking sign that read, Chen's Rest. I remembered it from my childhood. My father had taken me here once, many years ago, to meet an old friend. That I knocked on the door. After a long moment, it was opened by a stout man with graying hair and kind eyes. He looked at me, puzzled. Yes, he said. We are full for the night, I am afraid. You might try the inn further up the road. Old Chen, I said, my voice hoarse. It is me. Shenju. I am the daughter of Shin Shou. You used to play chess with my father. He squinted at me, studying my face. Then his eyes widened with recognition. Little Jew, by the heavens, child, what are you doing here at this hour? Where is your husband? That is a long story, I said. And I am afraid it is not a happy one. I have nowhere to go, and I have a maid with me. Could you spare a room for us? I can pay. Old Chen looked past me at Lianxiang, then back at me. He saw the fear in my eyes, the exhaustion in my posture. Without another word, he stepped aside. Come in, child. Both of you. You can tell me the story over a bowl of hot soup. I walked into the inn, Lianxiang close behind me. The warmth of the room washed over me, and the smell of food made my stomach growl. It was not a grand place, but it was safe. And for now, that was enough. That I had left behind everything I had known. My husband, my home, my status as a lady of the manor. I had left behind the life that had tried to drown me. And as I sat down at the worn wooden table and took the bowl of soup that old Chen placed before me, I felt something stir in my chest. That it was the first stirrings of hope. Chapter 2. Old Chen's Inn was a modest establishment by the Eastern Road, situated just beyond the city's main gates. It catered to traveling merchants, minor clerks, and the occasional wandering shoal who could not afford the finer lodgings any rare to the city center. The building was 2 stories of weathered timber, its walls darkened by yards of smoke from the kitchen herth, and its floors worn smooth by the countless feet that had crossed them. The inn's common room was a spacious hall with a long wooden counter where Old Shin presided over his jugs of rice wine and his steaming pots of stew. A few rickety tables were scattered about, and in the corner, a brazier glowed with embers that kept the chill of early winter at bay. Old Shin had given me and Lianxiang a small room on the 2nd floor. It was cramped, with a single narrow bed, a wash basin, and a small window that looked out onto the muddy road. But the mattress was clean, the blankets were thick, and the roof did not leak. Kampa read to the servants' quarters at the Ling Manor. It was a palace that I had slept deeply that first night, so deeply that I had not dreamed at all. When I woke, the pale light of dawn was filtering through the window, and I could hear the sounds of the inn coming to life below. The clatter of pots, the murmur of voices, and the sharp crackle of firewood in the kitchen herth. I sat up and looked around. Lianxiang was already awake, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, her knees drawn up to her chest. She looked up when she saw me stir, and a small, tentative smile crossed her face. "Good morning, mistress," she said softly. "Good morning, Lianxiang," I replied. "Did you sleep at all?" "I slept well enough," she said. "It is better than the cot I had at the manor, at least." I rose and went to the wash basin. The water was cold, but it woke me up. I splashed my face and ran my fingers through my tangled hair. I had no comb, no mirror, and no cosmetics. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the coins in my pouch. But I had my freedom. And that was worth more than all the silks and jewels in the Ling Manor. We went downstairs to the common room. Old Shin was behind the counter, wiping a wooden bowl with a rag. He looked up as we approached and gave us a warm smile. "Sit, sit," he said, gesturing to a table by the fire. "I will bring you some breakfast." We sat, and soon he placed 2 bowls of steaming congee before us, along with a plate of pickled vegetables and a small dish of salted fish. It was a simple meal, but it was more than I had expected. "Eat," he said. "You look like you have not had a proper meal in weeks." We ate in silence, savoring the warmth of the food. When we were done, Old Shin came to sit with us. His face was lined with age and concern. "Now, little Jew," he said, using the childhood nickname he had given me. "Tell me what happened. I knew your father well, and he would want me to help you if I could." I took a deep breath. I had told him the outline the night before, but now I gave him the full story. I told him about my marriage to Ling Yufeng, about the years of neglect and humiliation, about the loss of my husband's official position, and about his demand that I sell myself to Lord Luo. Old Chen's face darkened with each word I spoke. When I finished, he let out a long, heavy sigh. "I always knew that family was trouble," he said. "Your father warned you against that marriage, but you were young and in love. I do not blame you for that. But I am sorry for what they put you through." "Those days are behind me now," I said. "I have nothing, but I am free. I just need to find a way to survive." Old Shin studied me for a long moment, his eyes thoughtful. "Your father was a merchant, and a good one. He taught you the trade, did he not?" "He did," I said. "I can read a ledger, calculate profits and losses, and spot a dishonest deal." "That is valuable knowledge," Old Shin said. "But no one will hire a woman to manage their business. Not in this city, and not in this province. The guilds are controlled by men, and they will not admit a woman into their ranks." "I know," I said. "That is why I need to find another way." Old Shin leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "The merchants who pass through my inn are always in need of reliable information. They want to know which routes are safe, which officials are corrupt, and which goods are in demand. They pay well for that kind of knowledge." "You want me to be an informant? An informant is a crude word," he said. "Call yourself a merchant of information. You have the intelligence for it, and you have the discretion. And no one pays attention to a woman. You can move through the city without drawing suspicion." I thought about his words. In my past life, I had been powerless because I had been confined to the Ling manor. Here, on the outside, I had the freedom to move, to speak, to listen. And I had learned, in my years of servitude, that the most valuable currency was not silver or gold, it was knowledge. I will do it, I said. That the first few weeks were difficult. I had to learn the rhythms of the city, the names of the important merchants, the faces of the officials who frequented the inn. I had to teach myself to listen without appearing to listen, to observe without being observed. That I dressed in plain, modest clothes, the kind that would not draw attention. I wore my hair in a simple style, with no ornaments. I looked like any other woman of the lower classes, someone who could be overlooked in a crowd. Ling Yufeng was a great help. She had a natural talent for listening to gossip, and she had a way of making people feel comfortable enough to speak freely in her presence. I sent her to the markets, the temples, and the tea houses, and she returned with a wealth of information. That I also began to keep a small ledger, recording everything I learned. The prices of grain and silk, the movements of merchant ravens, the names of officials who were known to accept bribes. It was a humble start, but it was a start. One afternoon, about a month after I had arrived at the inn, I noticed a man sitting alone at a table in the corner of the common room. He was a merchant, I could tell by his clothes and his bea ring. He was dressed in a well-made but worn robe, and his hands were calloused from handling goods. He was sipping a cup of tea, but his eyes were distant, troubled. That I approached his table with a pot of tea. "Would you like a refill, sir?" I asked. That he looked up, riled. Then he nodded. "Yes, thank you." I poured the tea and set the pot down. "You look like a man who has something on his mind," I said, speaking casually. He gave a short, bitter laugh. "I have everything on my mind. I have a shipment of indigo dye that I cannot sell. The market has been flooded with cheaper goods from the south, and no one in this city wants to pay a fair price for quality." I sat down across from him, uninvited. He looked surprised but did not object. "That I might be able to help you," I said. "I know a merchant in the eastern province who is desperate for high-quality indigo. His usual supplier has been caught in a scandal and cannot sell. If you can get your goods to him within the next 2 weeks, you will make a handsome profit." The merchant's eyes narrowed. "And who are you to know such things?" "My name is Shinju," I said. "I am a broker of information. If you trust me, I can put you in touch with the buyer. I will take a small commission for my efforts." He studied me, weighing my words. Then he extended his hand. "I am Wei Zheng. If this deal goes through, I will pay you your commission. But if it does not, I will hold you responsible." "It will go through," I said. That the deal was a success. Wei Zheng delivered the indigo to the eastern province, and the buyer paid him a premium price. Wei Zheng returned to the inn a month later, flush with silver and full of praise for my intelligence. "You have a gift, Shinju," he said, slapping a pouch of coins on the table in front of me. "Your commission, as promised. And if you ever have another opportunity, I hope you will come to me first." I smiled and tucked the pouch into my sleeve. I will keep that in mind. News of my success spread through the local trade circles. Slowly, cautiously, other merchants began to seek me out. They would come to the inn, not for the food or the lodging, but for a word with the woman who seemed to know everything about everyone. I was careful to maintain my reputation for discretion and honesty. If I said a deal was fair, it was. If I said a merchant could be trusted, they could be. I did not trade in secrets that could harm innocent people. I focused on the small transactions of commerce, the kind that kept the city's economy flowing. In the meantime, I kept my ear to the ground for news of the Ling family. I had not forgotten them. I had not forgiven them. From what I heard, Ling Yufeng had managed to scrape together enough bribes from his relatives to delay his complete ruin. But his position was still precarious. He had lost his rank, his income, and his influence. The manor was a shadow of its former self. Lady Jiang had been forced to sell off several pieces of her jewelry to pay the household staff. The servants were leaving in droves. And Lord Luo, the old minister to whom my husband had tried to sell me, had taken another concubine. A young woman from a minor noble family. I heard that Ling Yufeng had been furious when he learned that the deal was off, but there was nothing he could do. He had lost his leverage. That I felt a cold, detached satisfaction at the news. It was not enough, of course. Nothing would ever be enough until Ling Yufeng had felt the full weight of the ruin he had tried to heap upon me. But it was a start one evening. I was in the market, buying supplies for the inn, when I saw a familiar face. It was a woman I remembered from the Ling household, a former maid named Hongmei. She was standing at a vegetable stall, looking tired and thin. Her clothes were shabby, and her face was marked by worry. I approached her. "Hongmei," I said. She turned, and her eyes widened in shock. "Mistress Shen, is it really you?" "Yes, it is me," I said. "What are you doing here? Are you still in the service of Lady Jiang?" Her face crumpled. "No, mistress. She dismissed me. She said the household could not afford my wages. I have been looking for work, but there is nothing. The Ling family is ruined, and everyone knows it. No one wants to hire their servants." I felt a pang of pity for her. She had been a good worker, always kind to me in my past life. And now she was suffering because of the greed and incompetence of the family she had served. "Hongmei," I said, "I have a proposition for you. I am building a small network of informants. I need people who can listen and report back to me. It is not a glamorous life, but I can pay you a fair wage, and you will not have to answer to Lady Jiang or her son. Would you be interested?" She read at me, bewildered. "You would hire me even after I served the family that treated you so badly?" "You were just a servant," I said. "You had no choice. It is your loyalty that I am interested in. I am not asking you to spy for me. I am asking you to listen. To watch. And to tell me what you are. That is all." She nodded slowly, a spark of hope flickering in her tired eyes. "I will do it, mistress. I will do anything." I gave her a few coins to tide her over and arranged to meet her in a few days. As I watched her walk away, I felt a small measure of satisfaction. I was not just surviving anymore. I was building an army. Small, slow, but steady. Over the next few months, I expanded my network. I hired 2 more former servants from the Ling household, women who had been dismissed by Lady Jiang. I also made contact with a few street vendors, a messenger who worked for the postal service, and a clerk in the office of the local magistrate. None of them knew each other, and none of them knew the full extent of my operations. They simply knew that a woman named Shenju paid generously for reliable gossip. I also began to invest my earnings. Old Shen had taught me the value of land, and I had purchased a small, run-down shop in the market district. It was in a poor location, with a leaky roof and a bad reputation, but I saw the potential. I renovated it, opened a small tea house, and staffed it with women who had lost their positions because of the economic downturn. It was a safe place for them to work, and it was a place where people came to talk. That the tea house was not about tea. It was about information. The merchants, the clerks, the minor officials, they all came through. And they all talked. I did not attend to the customers myself. I stayed in a small back office, surrounded by ledgers and lists of names. I was the invisible hand behind the operation, and I preferred it that way. One evening, Wei Jing returned to the inn. He looked anxious, and he asked to speak with me in private. "Shenju," he said, lowering his voice, "I have a new opportunity. The tariffs on silk have been increased, making it difficult for smaller traders to compete. But there is a loophole. If the silk is transported through the Western Pass, it is taxed at a lower rate. It is a well-known trick, but you need the right connections to pull it off. I want to partner with you. You provide the intelligence and the network, I provide the capital and the transport. We split the profits." I studied him carefully. He was a good merchant, I knew that. But he was also greedy. And greedy men often made dangerous mistakes. "Why do you need me?" I asked. "You have the capital and the connections. You could do this yourself. Because you are a woman, he said bluntly. No one pays attention to a woman. The officials who run the checkpoint at the pass will see a female merchant and think nothing of it. They will be too busy looking for a man to bribe. And I have seen the way you work, Shinju. You are meticulous. You are careful. I trust you to handle the details while I handle the larger picture. It was a tempting offer. The silk trade was lucrative, and the loophole he described was a real one. But I sensed a trap. Wei Zheng was too eager. He was offering too much to you are in debt, I said quietly. I heard a rumor that you lost a large shipment to pirates in the Eastern Sea. You are looking for a way to recover your losses quickly. Am I wrong? His face went pale. The mask of confidence slipped for just a moment, revealing the desperation beneath it. You are a Shah RP1, he said, recovering his composure. Yes, I had a loss. But the silk deal will cover it. This is a sure thing, Shinju. There is no risk. No risk, I shook my head. There is always risk. And you are asking me to put my reputation on the line for a gamble that could cost me everything. I will not do business with you, Wei Zheng. He read at me, his expression shifting from shock to anger. You are turning me down after I offered you 50%. You are a fool, woman. You could be rich. You could be powerful. Instead, you choose to sit in this little tea house and listen to the gossip of merchants. I choose to be careful, I said. I will give you some advice. Forget the silk deal. You are not the only one who knows about the loophole, and there are people in the western province who will not take kindly to a stranger cutting into their profits. It is a trap. Someone is setting you up. He laughed, a bitter sound. You are paranoid, Shinju. You have been in the shadows for too long. You have forgotten how to seize an opportunity. He stood, pushing his chair back. Very well. I will take my business elsewhere. He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. I sat in the silence, thinking. Was I being too cautious in my past life? I had been the opposite, rash and trusting. Perhaps I had swung too far in the other direction. But as the days passed, I heard a rumor that confirmed my suspicions. Wei Zheng had been arrested. He had been caught trying to smuggle silk through the Western Pass without the proper permits. The officials had seized his goods and thrown him in prison. His business was ruined. It was a stark lesson. And it made me realize that I could not simply hide in my tea house, waiting for opportunities to come to me. I had to be proactive. I had to seize the reins of my own fate. That I had also been thinking about Lianxiang. She had been the first person to show me kindness in my new life, and I had never forgotten her. I had asked Hongmei to discreetly inquire about her, and she had returned with distressing news. Lianxiang had been sold by Lady Jiang after my depart tour, and she had ended up in a less than reputable establishment in the city's pleasure quarter. The news filled me with a cold, burning fury. Lianxiang had been a loyal servant, a kind soul. She had helped me escape the Ling Manor, and she had paid for her kindness with her freedom. I could not let that stand. That evening, I made my way to the pleasure quarter. It was a part of the city I had never visited, even in my past life. The streets were lined with lanterns, and the sounds of music and laughter drifted out from the buildings. The air was thick with the scent of incense and perfume. I found the establishment where Lianxiang was being kept. It was a small, shabby building at the end of a narrow alley. I knocked on the door, and a woman in a faded, gaudy dress answered. She looked me up and down with a professional eye. You are not a customer, she said. What do you want? I am looking for a woman named Lianxiang, I said. I am here to buy out her contract. The woman's eyebrows rose in surprise. That one, she is not even a courtesan. She is just a scullery maid. She is good for nothing. Nevertheless, I want her. Name your price. She named a sum that was exorbitant, far more than a scullery maid was worth. But I had the money, and I paid it without argument. A few moments later, Lianxiang was brought to me. She was thin, pale, and wearing the rough, cheap clothes of a servant. She looked at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. That Mistress Shen, she whispered. Is it really you? Yes, Lianxiang, I said, reaching out to take her hand. It is me. I have come to take you home. She burst into tears, clinging to my hand as though I were a lifeline. I led her out of the pleasure quarter, away from the lanterns and the music, back into the quiet streets of the city. We walked in silence for a long time. When we finally reached the inn, I took her to my room and sat her down on the bed. You are safe now, I said. You will never have to go back to that place. She looked at me, her eyes still wet with tears. Mistress, why did you come for me? I am just a servant. I am not worth the money you paid. You are worth everything, I said firmly. You helped me when I had nothing. Now I will help you. From now on, you will work for me. Not as a servant, but as a partner. I need people I can trust, and I trust you. She nodded, a new light in her eyes. I will not let you down, mistress. I smiled. I know you will not. That night, as I lay in my bed, I thought about how far I had come. I had escaped a life of servitude and humiliation. I had built a network of informants and agents. I had rescued the woman who had helped me in my darkest hour. But I was not done yet. Ling Yufeng was still out there, clinging to the remnants of his power. He had tried to sell me, to use me, to destroy me. And he had not succeeded. I would make sure he paid for every moment of suffering he had caused me. Not out of revenge, but out of justice. That I closed my eyes and let the exhaustion of the day wash over me. Tomorrow, I would begin again. There was still so much to do. Chapter 3 Winter settled over the city like a heavy woolen blanket, gray and oppressive. The mornings were bitter cold, and frost laced the windows of old Chen's Inn. Inside, however, the common room was always warm, the heat crackling with pine logs that filled the air with a resinous scent. The merchants who passed through seemed to linger longer these days, huddled around the fire with cups of mulled wine, their voices low and urgent. I noticed the change in their conversations. There was a nervous energy in the air, a tension that had not been there before. The emperor was ill, they said. No, he was dying. The court was in turmoil, and the struggle for succession had already begun in whispers that would soon become shouts. For me, the instability was an opportunity. When the powerful are distracted by their own games, they often overlook the smaller pieces on the Boa road. And I was determined to be a small piece that no one saw coming. The tea house was thriving. I had renamed it the Clea our Water Pavilion, a name that suggested calm and transparency, though my true business was anything but transparent. The women I had hired were loyal and discreet, and they had Leah or Ned to listen without a ring to listen. They served tea, smiled at the customers, and remembered every word that was spoken. That I had also expanded my network of informants beyond the city. I had made contact with a few merchants who traveled regularly to the capital and the eastern provinces. They ride letters for me, sealed with wax and marked with a simple symbol, a single lotus blossom. The symbol had been my mother's, and I used it now as a signature of my growing influence. The letters contained questions and requests. I wanted to know about the political factions in the capital, the movements of the army, the mood of the court. I wanted to know who was rising and who was falling. I wanted to know everything. And in return, I offered information. The names of corrupt officials in the provinces, the prices of grain in the western markets, the routes that were safe for travel and the ones that were not. I traded knowledge like a merchant trades goods, and I profited handsomely. But I did not forget my primary goal. I had not forgiven Ling Yufeng. I had not forgotten the cold water of the river, the weight of my soaked robes, the sight of his face above me as I sank. He had tried to drown me. And he had almost succeeded. Now, he was drowning in his own failures. His reputation was ruined, his fortune depleted, his influence gone. But he was still alive. He was still breathing. And as long as he was alive, I would not rest. One evening, Hongmei came to me with news. Her face was pale, and her hands were trembling. Mistress, she said, her voice ba rely above a whisper, I have heard something. Something you need to know. I set down my ledger and looked at her. Tell me. She took a shaky breath. Lady Jiang has been selling off the remaining assets of the Ling household. The furniture, the paintings, even the ancestral tablets. She is desperate for money. But that is not the worst of it. The young master, he has been seen in the pleasure corridor. He is gambling heavily, and he is losing. They say he has accumulated debts that he cannot pay. I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. Ling Yufeng, gambling in the pleasure corridor. It was a new low, even for him. In my past life, he had been arrogant and cruel, but he had never been a gambler. The desperation of his situation had driven him to new depths of folly. Who is he gambling with? I asked. I do not know the names, Hongmei said. But the debts are significant. The moneylenders are already circling. If he does not find a way to pay them soon, they will take everything he has left. I nodded slowly. This was an opportunity. But I had to be careful. Ling Yufeng was a desperate man, and desperate men were unpredictable. Thank you, Hongmei, I said. You have done well. Keep listening. If you hear anything more, come to me immediately. She bowed and left. I sat in the silence of my back office, staring at the flickering candle flame. Ling Yufeng was vulnerable. And vulnerability, I had Ned, was a weapon. The next morning, I went to the pleasure corridor. It was a different place in the daylight, tawdry and faded, the lanterns unlit, the music silent. The women who had been smiling and laughing the night before looked tired and hollow in the gray morning light. I found the gambling house where Ling Yufeng had been seen. It was a large establishment, with red painted doors and a gaudy sign that proclaimed it to be the House of Fortune. I pushed open the doors and stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by a few oil lamps. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and cheap wine. A few men were gathered around a table, playing dice, but they looked up when I entered. A large man with a SCA red face approached me. We do not allow women in here, he said gruffly. I am not here to gamble, I said. I am here to speak with the owner. Tell him that Shinju is here to see him. The man studied me for a moment, then grunted and read through a curtain at the back. A few moments later, he returned and gestured for me to follow. The owner of the House of Fortune was a thin, weasel-faced man named He Bao. He was sitting behind a desk, counting a stack of silver coins. He looked up as I entered, his eyes shot RP and calculating. Shinju, he said, setting down his coins. I have heard of you. The merchant of information. What brings you to my establishment? I have come to talk about a mutual acquaintance, I said. Ling Yufeng. He Bao's eyes narrowed. What about him? He owes you money, does he not? He Bao leaned back in his chair, a thin smile playing on his lips. Yes. A considerable amount. He has been promising to pay, but I have yet to see a single coin. Why do you ask? I have a proposition for you, I said. I am willing to pay off his debts. In exchange, I want to know everything about his current situation. His movements, his plans, his associates. I want to know who he is trying to borrow from, who is willing to lend to him, and who is turning him away. He Bao's eyebrows rose in surprise. You want to pay his debts? That is a generous offer. What is he to you? He was my husband, I said. And he wronged me. I am not paying his debts out of kindness. I am paying them to gain control over him. He Bao laughed, a ha rsh, ba king sound. I like you, Shinju. You have a cold rt, and that is re in a woman. Very well. I will accept your offer. His debts amount to 70 taels of silver. 70 taels. It was a significant sum, but I had it. I reached into my sleeve and pulled out a pouch of silver, placing it on his desk. Now, I said, tell me everything. He Bao told me everything. Ling Yufeng had been gambling for weeks, trying to recoup his losses. He had been borrowing from anyone who would lend to him, but his credit was running out. He had tried to sell the Ling Manor, but no one wanted to buy a property that was associated with a disgraced official. He was desperate, and his desperation was making him reckless. He has been approaching Lord Luo again, He Bao said. He is trying to arrange a meeting with the old minister. I do not know what he hopes to achieve, but he is persistent. Lord Luo. The name sent a chill down my spine. In my past life, Ling Yufeng had sold me to Lord Luo. Now, he was trying to find another way to buy the old minister's favor. It seemed he had not learned his lesson. Thank you, I said, rising. If he comes here again, send word to me at the Clea or water pavilion. I will pay you well for the information. I left the House of Fortune, my mind racing. Ling Yufeng was trying to rebuild his connections, to claw his way back into the good graces of the powerful. If he succeeded, he might regain some of his influence. And if he regained his influence, he might come after me. I could not allow that to happen. That evening, I summoned Lianxiang to my office. She had been working with me for several months now, and she had proven herself to be sharp and resourceful. I trusted her with my life. Lianxiang, I said, I need you to do something for me. I need you to go to Lord Luo's residence and offer your services as a maid. You will be my eyes and ears inside his household. Her eyes widened. Mistress, Lord Luo is a powerful man. If he discovers that I am spying for you, I will be punished severely. I know, I said. That is why I am asking you, not ordering you. I will not force you to do this. But I need someone I can trust, and you are the only one I trust completely. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, what do you want me to look for? I want to know everything about Ling Yufeng's dealings with Lord Luo. I want to know what he is offering, what he is asking for, and what Lord Luo is willing to give him. I also want to know about Lord Luo's political leanings. Who does he support in the court? Who are his allies, who are his enemies? Lianxiang nodded slowly. I will do it, mistress. But it may take time to gain their trust. I have time, I said. Go tomorrow. I will provide you with a letter of recommendation from a merchant who is known to Lord Luo's Stue Road. It will be enough to get you through the door. She left, and I sat in the silence of my office, sta ring at the blank wall. I was moving pieces on a boa rd, but I was not yet sure of the full game. I knew only that I had to keep Ling Yufeng from rising again. Whatever it took. Weeks passed. The winter deepened, and the city grew quiet. The streets were often empty, the market sparsely attended. People stayed indoors, huddled around their braziers, waiting for the spring that I received regular reports from Lianxiang. She had been hired as a scullery maid in Lord Luo's household, and she had quickly made herself useful. She was a hard worker, and she had a talent for making people overlook her. She was like a shadow in the household, invisible and all-seeing. Lord Luo, she reported, was a shrewd old man. He was deeply involved in the political struggles of the capital, though he was careful to hide his involvement. He had a network of spies and informants that rivaled my own. He was cautious and calculating, and he did not trust anyone easily. Ling Yufeng, Lianxiang reported, had managed to secure a meeting with Lord Luo. He had come to the residence, dressed in his finest robes, and had begged for the old minister's assistance. He had offered to serve Lord Luo in any capacity, to be a tool for the old man's schemes. Lord Luo had listened politely, but he had not committed to anything. He had sent Ling Yufeng away with vague promises of future consideration. He was keeping his options open. That he is not interested in Ling Yufeng, I said to Lianxiang when she reported this to me. He is using him. He is letting him dangle, hoping that he will offer something more valuable in his desperation. That is what I thought too, Lianxiang said. Lord Luo is a patient man. He is waiting for the right moment to strike. I nodded. The game was becoming clear. That a few weeks later, I received word that Ling Yufeng had been seen meeting with a man named Zhao Qing. Zhao Qing was a minor official in the provincial government, a man of little importance but great ambition. He was known to be a go-between for several powerful figures in the capital. I sent Hong Mei to investigate. She returned with the news that Ling Yufeng was trying to arrange a marriage between himself and a woman from a wealthy merchant family. The woman's father was a man named Sun Ding, one of the richest merchants in the province. Sun Ding, I said, surprised. He is a shrewd man. He would not marry his daughter to a disgraced official unless there was something in it for him. There is, Hong Mei said. Ling Yufeng has promised to use his connections in the capital to help Sun Ding secure a lucrative contract for the supply of grain to the army. It is a substantial deal, worth thousands of taels of silver. I sat back, stunned. Ling Yufeng was trying to rebuild his fortune by selling his supposed influence. It was a desperate gamble. He did not have the connections to secure such a contract, and even if he did, he would not be able to deliver. But if he succeeded, even partially, he would gain the patronage of Sun Ding. And Sun Ding's wealth could restore the Ling family's fortunes. That I could not allow that to happen. That the next day, I went to visit Sun Ding. His residence was a grand mansion on the eastern side of the city, surrounded by high walls and guarded by armed retainers. I sent my name in, and after a long wait, I was admitted to his presence. Sun Ding was a portly man with a round face and shrewd, calculating eyes. He was dressed in rich silks, and his fingers were adorned with heavy rings. He looked at me with undisguised curiosity. Shenju, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I have heard of you. The merchant of information. What brings you to my humble abode? I have come to warn you, I said. I understand you are reconsidering a marriage between your daughter and Ling Yufeng. His expression flickered with surprise. You are well informed. Yes, I am considering it. He has made a generous offer. He has made a false offer, I said bluntly. He does not have the connections to deliver what he promises. He is a disgraced official with no influence and no prospects. He is trying to use your daughter to rebuild his fortune. And once he has your money, he will abandon her without a second thought. Sun Ding's eyes narrowed. And how do you know this? I was his wife, I said. I know him better than anyone. He is a man of empty promises and cruel intentions. If you align yourself with him, you will regret it. Sun Ding was silent for a long moment. I could see him weighing my words, calculating the risks. Why should I trust you? He asked. You are a woman with no family, no connections. You are a merchant of gossip. How do I know you are not trying to harm him for your own reasons? Because I have nothing to gain from this, I said. I am not asking for anything in return. I am simply warning you because I know what kind of man he is. I have suffered at his hands, and I do not want to see your daughter suffer the same fate. Sun Ding studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I will consider your words carefully, he said. Thank you for coming to me. I rose and left, knowing that I had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. It was not a guarantee, but it was a start. A few days later, I heard that Sun Ding had called off the marriage negotiations. He had cited a disagreement over the dowry as the official reason, but I knew the truth. My words had found their mark. Ling Yufeng was furious. He had been denied yet again, and his desperation was growing. He began to gamble more heavily, risking larger sums in the hope of recovering his losses. But his luck was bad, and his losses only mounted. And then, just before the new year, the news came that shook the entire province. The emperor had died. The succession crisis had exploded into open conflict, with two factions vying for control of the throne. The capital was in chaos, and the provinces were bracing for war. I sat in my office, ring at the report that had been brought to me by a messenger from the capital. The world was changing. The old order was crumbling, and a new order was rising from the ashes. I saw the opportunity before me. In times of chaos, fortunes could be made and destroyed. I had built a network of informants and agents, a small army of people who trusted me. I had the knowledge, the resources, and the will to use them. But I also saw the danger. Ling Yufeng was still out there, desperate and unpredictable. He might try to take advantage of the chaos to rebuild his fortunes. He might try to seek revenge against me. I could not let that happen. I had to act. I had to move against him before he could move against me. The winter wind howled outside my window, rattling the shutters. I lit a candle and began to write. I wrote letters to my informants, to my agents, to everyone who owed me favors. I set in motion a plan that would bring Ling Yufeng to his knees once and for all. I did not know exactly how it would unfold. The future was uncertain, and the chaos of the succession crisis made it even more unpredictable. But I had learned one thing in my journey: I had survived the worst that life could throw at me. I had risen from the ashes of my old life, and I would rise again. Whatever happened next, I was ready. Chapter 4: The succession crisis erupted like a summer storm, sudden and violent. News from the capital arrived in fragments, arrived by messengers and panicked merchants fleeing the chaos. The late emperor's eldest son had declared himself the rightful heir, but his younger brother, supported by a coalition of military commanders, had raised his banner in rebellion. The capital was under siege, the imperial palace was surrounded, and the fate of the empire hung in the balance. Here in the provinces, the effects were immediate. The flow of goods and silver slowed to a trickle. The roads were unsafe, and bandits grew bolder. The price of grain soared, and the poor began to go hungry. The local magistrate, a timid man named Zhang Wei, was paralyzed by indecision. He did not know which faction to support, so he supported neither. He sat in his yamen, wringing his hands, waiting for the storm to pass. But I could not afford to wait. In times of chaos, opportunity and danger walked hand in hand. I had to be ready for both. I summoned my most trusted agents to a meeting at the Clea our water pavilion. The tea house was closed to the public that evening. The shutters were drawn, and the lamps were lit. I sat at the head of the long table in the back room, and around me sat Lianxiang, Hongmei, Old Shen, and two other women I had come to trust, a street vendor named Plum Blossom and a former clerk from the magistrate's office who called himself Sholei Arjao. I have called you here because the situation is dire, I said, my voice low but steady. The capital is in chaos, and the province is vulnerable. There are those who will try to profit from this turmoil, and there are those who will be crushed by it. I intend to be among those who profit. Old Shen leaned forward, his weathered face creased with concern. What do you propose, little Jew? We are just merchants and servants. We have no armies, no influence. We have something better, I said. We have knowledge. We know the roads, the prices, the people. We know who is honest and who is corrupt. And in a time of chaos, knowledge is more valuable than gold. I laid out my plan. I would use my network to gather intelligence on the movements of the rebel forces and the loyalist troops. I would identify which officials were likely to switch sides and which were likely to remain loyal. I would buy up grain and other essential goods while prices were still low, and I would sell them when prices soared. I would position myself as a broker of information, a bridge between the powerful and the desperate. It was a bold plan, and it was risky. If I chose the wrong side, would be destroyed. But if I chose wisely, I could build a fortune that would secure my future forever. There is one more thing, I said, my voice hardening. Ling Yufeng is still out there. He is desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. I need to know what he is doing, where he is going, and who he is talking to. I will not rest until he is neutralized. Lianxiang spoke up. Mistress, I have been watching him through my contacts in Lord Luo's household. He has been meeting with a man named Guojian, a former officer in the provincial army. Guojian was dismissed for corruption, but he still has connections among the soldiers. They are planning something. Planning what? I asked. I do not know yet, Lianxiang said. But it is something big. They have been meeting in secret, and they have been talking about a shipment of weapons that is passing through the province. I think they are planning to intercept it. A shipment of weapons. In the midst of a succession crisis, weapons were worth their weight in gold. If Ling Yufeng and Guojian managed to seize them, they could sell them to one of the Waring factions and make a fortune. They could also use them to buy influence and power. But if they failed, they would be executed as bandits. I smiled. This was the opportunity one had been waiting for. Lianxiang, I said, I need you to find out the details of this plan. The route of the weapons shipment, the number of Gua RDS, the timing. Everything. She nodded. I will do my best, mistress. Hongmei, I said, I need you to watch Guijian. Follow him, learn his habits, his weaknesses. He is a former officer, which means he has enemies. Find out who they are. I will, mistress, Hongmei said. Old Shen, I said, I need you to spread word among the merchants that I am buying up grain. Tell them I am paying a fair price, but I need it delivered quickly. Do not tell them why. He nodded. I will see to it. And Sholei Zhao, I said, turning to the former clerk, I need you to go to the magistrate's office and find out everything you can about the local militia. Who is in Cha Rge, how many men they have, where they are re-stationed. I need to know if they can be relied upon. Sholei Zhao bowed. I will do as you ask. The meeting ended, and my agents dispersed into the night. I sat alone in the back room, the candle flickering before me. The pieces were in motion. Now I had to wait and see how they fell. The days that followed were tense. The city was on edge, and the streets were quieter than usual. People stayed in their homes, afraid to venture out. The markets were half empty, and the price of food continued to rise. That I received regular reports from my agents. Lianxiang had discovered that the weapons shipment was scheduled to pass through the province in 2 weeks. It was a large shipment of swords and a remer, destined for the loyalist forces in the north. The Gua RDS were a mixed group of soldiers and hired mercenaries, about 50 men in total. Guijian, Hongmei reported, was a man of habit. He visited the same tea house every afternoon, and he was always accompanied by 2 bodyguard RDS. He was also deeply in debt to several moneylenders, and he was desperate for money. That I saw the opening. If I could expose Ling Yufeng and Guijian's plan before they could execute it, they would be arrested and executed. It would be the end of them both. But I had to be careful. If I made a move too soon, they might escape. If I waited too long, they might succeed in their plot. I had to time my strike perfectly. A week before the shipment was due to arrive, I went to see Magistrate Zhang Wei. His yamen was a modest building in the center of the city, surrounded by a high wall and guarded by a few Wei soldiers. I sent my name in, and after a long wait, I was admitted to his presence. Magistrate Zhang was a thin, nervous man with a receding hairline and a constant tremor in his hands. He looked at me with suspicion. Shenju, he said. I have heard of you. You are the woman who runs the tea house. Yes, what do you want with me? I have come to warn you, magistrate, I said. There is a plot afoot to intercept a shipment of weapons that is passing through the province. The men behind the plot are Ling Yufeng and Guijian. If they succeed, they will sell the weapons to one of the rebel factions. That would be a disaster for the province and for the loyalist cause. Magistrate Zhang's face went pale. This is a serious accusation. Do you have evidence? I have informants who have heard them discussing the plan, I said. I can provide you with the details. The route, the timing, the number of Gua RDS. You can ambush them before they strike. He hesitated. He was a cautious man, and he did not like to take risks. But I knew that he was also a man who read the consequences of inaction. If the weapons fell into the hands of the rebels, he would be held responsible. How do I know you are telling the truth? He asked. Because I have nothing to gain from lying, I said. I am not asking for money or favors. I am asking for justice. Ling Yufeng wronged me, and I want to see him pay for his crimes. That is all. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. I will send a patrol to intercept them. But if this turns out to be a false accusation, you will face the consequences. I understand, I said. That I left the yamen with a sense of grim satisfaction. The trap was set. Now I had only to wait. The night of the interception was cold and clear. I stood on the roof of the clear water pavilion, watching the distant lights of the city. Lianxiang stood beside me, her breath misting in the cold air. Do you think it will work? She asked. If it has to, I said. Everything depends on it. We waited in silence. The hours passed slowly. The moon rose high in the sky, casting silver shadows across the rooftops. The city was still and quiet. Then, in the distance, we heard the clatter of hooves and the shouting of men. The sounds grew louder, closer. I strained my eyes, trying to see what was happening. A column of soldiers rode through the city gates, their torches blazing. They were escorting a group of bound prisoners. Among them, I recognized the figure of Ling Yufeng. He was on foot, his hands tied behind his back, his head bowed. He was wearing tattered robes, and his face was bruised and bloody. Guo was with him, similarly bound. The soldiers were rough with them, shoving them forward, jeering at them. I watched as they were led toward the magistrate's yamen. The procession passed beneath the roof of the tea house, and for a moment, Ling Yufeng looked up. He did not see me, hidden as I was in the shadows. But I saw him. I saw the despair in his eyes, the realization that he had been caught. And I smiled. The trial was swift. Magistrate Zhang, eager to demonstrate his loyalty to the loyalist cause, convicted Ling Yufeng and Guo of banditry and treason. They were sentenced to death by beheading. I did not attend the execution. I had no desire to see Ling Yufeng die. I simply wanted to know that he was gone. Lianxiang brought me the news. It is done, mistress, she said. They were executed this morning. The magistrate made a public spectacle of it, to show the people that he is taking action against the rebels. I nodded. I felt no joy, no relief. I simply felt a sense of closure. The man who had tried to sell me, who had tried to drown me, was finally gone. He could never hurt me again. But my work was not done. The succession crisis continued to rage, and the province was still unstable. I had to be ready for whatever came next. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I bought up grain at low prices and sold it at high prices. I brokered deals between merchants and officials, earning commissions and favors. I expanded my network of informants, reaching deeper into the capital and the surrounding provinces. I also began to think about my future. I had built a fortune, a reputation, and a network of loyal followers. But I was still a woman alone. I had no family, no husband, no children. In the eyes of the world, I was still a nobody. But I did not see a re. I had survived. I had thrived. And I had proven that a woman could be more than a wife, more than a victim, more than a footnote in someone else's story. One evening, as I sat in my office at the Clear Water Pavilion, Lianxiang came to me with a letter. It was sealed with the symbol of the lotus blossom. Who sent this? I asked it. I do not know, she said. It was delivered by a messenger. He said it was from the capital. I broke the seal and read the letter. It was brief, written in a precise and elegant hand. To Shinju, you have been noticed. Your network, your intelligence, your influence, they have not gone unseen. I would like to meet with you. If you are interested, come to the capital. Ask for the purple bamboo courtier, wrote a friend. I read the letter several times, my heart pounding. A friend or an enemy I could not tell. But the letter was an invitation, and invitations were opportunities. Lianxiang, I said, I am going to the capital. Prepare my things. She looked at me, surprised. The capital. Mistress, it is dangerous. The fighting is still going on. I know, I said. But I cannot ignore this. Someone has been watching me. Someone powerful. I need to know who it is and what they want. She nodded, though her face was filled with worry. I will come with you. No, I said. I need you here. You will manage the tea house and the network in my absence. I trust you, Lianxiang. I trust you with my life. Her eyes filled with tears. Mistress, please be careful. I will, I said. I have come too far to let anything happen to me now. The next morning, I set out for the capital. I traveled alone, dressed in plain clothes, carrying a small bundle of belongings. I was just another traveler on the road, invisible and unremarkable. But I was not traveling as a nobody. I was traveling as Shinju, the merchant of information. And I was going to the capital to meet my destiny. The road to the capital was long and dangerous. I passed through villages that had been burned and looted, through fields that had been abandoned. I saw refugees fleeing the fighting, their faces gaunt with hunger and fear. I traveled for 2 weeks, sleeping in inns and farmhouses, avoiding the armed patrols that roamed the roads. I kept my head down and my mouth shut, and I survived. Finally, I arrived at the gates of the capital. The city was a fortress, surrounded by high walls and guarded by armed soldiers. I was searched and questioned before I was allowed to enter. The capital was a city in chaos. The streets were crowded with soldiers and refugees. The shops were shuttered, and the temples were filled with people praying for peace. The air was thick with tension and fear. I found the purple bamboo courtier road. It was a small, elegant residence in a quiet neighborhood, hidden behind a high wall and a gate of red wood. I knocked, and the gate was opened by an elderly servant. Shinju, he asked. Yes, I said. He nodded and led me inside. The courtier was beautiful, filled with bamboo and flowering plants. A small stream ran through the center, and a pavilion stood at the end. In the pavilion, a woman was waiting for me. She was tall and graceful, dressed in robes of deep purple. Her face was partly hidden by a veil, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Shinju, she said, her voice warm, I am so glad you came. I have been waiting for you. I studied her, trying to place her face. Who are you? I asked. She lifted her veil, revealing a face that was surprisingly young. She was perhaps in her late 20s, with delicate features and a calm, knowing smile. My name is Wei Rulan, she said. And I have a proposal for you. Chapter 5. The purple bamboo courtier road was a sanctuary of stillness in a city that had gone mad. The walls were high enough to muffle the distant shouts of soldiers and the clatter of hooves on cobblestones. Inside, the air was scented with jasmine and damp earth from the small stream that wound through the garden. I sat across from Wei Rulan in the pavilion, a low table between us bearing a pot of steaming tea and 2 delicate porcelain cups. She poured for me with the practiced grace of someone who had been raised in the finest households, her movements unhurried, her eyes never leaving my face. You have come a long way, she said, setting down the teapot. I trust your journey was uneventful. I survived, I said. That is more than many can say these days. She smiled, a thin, knowing curve of her lips. Indeed. The roads are dangerous, and the capital is more dangerous still. But you are not a woman who is easily deterred. I have been watching you for some time, Shinju. Your rise from nothing has been remarkable. I did not return her smile. You said you had a proposal for me. I am listening. Wei Rulan leaned back, studying me with the same sharp intensity one had seen in the eyes of merchants sizing up a deal. The succession crisis has reached a critical point. The rebel forces are at the gates of the capital, and the loyalists are fractured and weak. Both sides are desperate for allies, for intelligence, for resources. And you, Shinju, have built something a network of informants that spans the provinces. A reputation for discretion and reliability. An influence that extends far beyond what a woman of your station should possess. Flattery will not get you what you want, I said flatly. Tell me plainly what you are asking. Her smile widened, and I caught a glint of approval in her eyes. Very well. I am not a noblewoman, though I move in their circles. I am a merchant, like you. My family has traded in silk and tea for 3 generations. But I have also traded in something more valuable. Information. Secrets. Favors. I am what you might call a broker of influence. A spy, I said. If you prefer the blunt term, yes. I have agents in every major household in the capital. I know which ministers are plotting against each other, which generals are secretly negotiating with the rebels, which eunuchs are selling access to the throne. And I know that you have built a similar network in the provinces. I sipped my tea, considering her words. She was not wrong. But I did not trust her. In my experience, people who offered gifts always expected something in return. What do you want from me? I asked. I want an alliance, she said. Your network and mine, joined together. We would be the most powerful information brokers in the empire. We could shape the outcome of this war. We could choose who sits on the throne. It was a bold claim, but I did not doubt that she believed it. The question was whether she could deliver. And what would I get in return? I asked. Protection, she said. Resources. Access to the highest circles of power. I can open doors that you could never open on your own. I can give you the influence to secure your future, to protect yourself against any enemy, to ensure that no one will ever be able to harm you again. She had touched a nerve. The memory of the river, the cold water closing over my head, the weight of Ling Yufeng's betrayal, it was still fresh, still raw. I had survived, but I had not forgotten. I would never forget. But I was not a woman who let her emotions guide her decisions. Not anymore. I will consider your offer, I said. But I need time to verify that you are who you say you are, and that you can deliver what you promise. Wei Rulan nodded, as if she had expected nothing less. Of course. Stay here at the Purple Bamboo Courtier Road for as long as you need. You will be safe here. I have made certain that this house is protected. I stayed. The days that followed were a blur of meetings and introductions. Wei Rulan introduced me to her network, a collection of Sholayars, merchants, servants, and courtesans who moved through the capital like shadows. I met ministers who were secretly plotting against their colleagues. I met generals who were hedging their bets, waiting to see which side would emerge victorious. I met eunuchs who sold access to the emperor's chambers for a price. It was a world of intrigue and danger, but it was also a world of opportunity. I began to see the shape of the game Wei Rulan was playing. She was not aligned with either faction. She was aligned with herself. She was building a web of influence that would ensure her survival regardless of who won the war. And I realized that she was offering me the chance to do the same. One evening, Wei Rulan summoned me to her private chambers. The room was elegant but spa-rse, decorated with a few scrolls and a single vase of plum blossoms. She was seated at a low desk, writing a letter. When I entered, she set down her brush and gestured for me to sit. I have received word that the rebel forces have broken through the outer defenses, she said calmly. The capital will fall within the week. I felt a chill run down my spine. What will happen to the loyalists? Most will be executed, she said. Some will flee. A few will switch sides. The question is, which side will we be on? I had been thinking about that question ever since I arrived in the capital. The rebel leader, Prince Ning, was known to be ruthless but pragmatic. He revered loyalty but punished betrayal harshly. The loyalist faction, on the other hand, was led by the late emperor's eldest son, Crown Prince Yun, a man of weak character who had been manipulated by his advisors. We should not commit to either side, I said slowly. We should position ourselves to be useful to both. That way, no matter who wins, we survive. Wei Rulan's eyes gleamed with approval. That is exactly what I was thinking. I have already made contact with Prince Ning's advisors. They are interested in our intelligence. But I have also maintained channels to Crown Prince Yun. The key is to make both sides believe that we are loyal to them, without ever committing fully to either. It was a dangerous game. If either side discovered our duplicity, we would be executed. But if we succeeded, we would emerge from the chaos with more power than we had ever imagined. I will need to return to the province, I said. My network is strongest there. I can gather intelligence on the movements of the rebel forces and the loyalist troops. I can also secure the grain supply and ensure that the cities in the province remain stable. Wei Rulan nodded. Go. But be careful. The roads are dangerous, and there are spies everywhere. I will send a few of my agents with you to ensure your safety. I left the capital the next morning, accompanied by two of Wei Ruolan's most trusted agents. They were silent, watchful men who moved like shadows. I did not know their names, and I did not ask. I simply accepted their presence and focused on the journey ahead. The road back to the province was even more dangerous than the road to the capital. The rebel forces had advanced further, and the countryside was in chaos. I saw villages that had been burned to the ground, fields that had been trampled, bodies that had been left to rot by the side of the road. The refugees were everywhere, their faces hollow with hunger and despair. That I traveled quickly, avoiding the main roads and the Remed patrols. My agents were skilled at navigating the chaos, and we reached the province in just over a week. I returned to the Clea, our water pavilion, to find that Lianxiang had kept things running smoothly in my absence. The tea house was busy, and my network of informants was intact. She greeted me with a relieved smile and a warm embrace. That mistress, I was so worried about you, she said. The roads have been so dangerous. I heard that the rebels have taken several cities in the north. I am back now, I said. And I have much to tell you. I gathered my most trusted agents and briefed them on the situation in the capital. I told them about Wei Ruolan and her network, about the alliance I had formed with her, about the need to gather intelligence on the movements of both the rebel and loyalist forces. The province is strategically important, I said. The grain supplies from the south pass through here, and the roads lead to the capital. Both sides will try to control this region. We need to be ready to help whoever is likely to win, while also preparing for the possibility that we might have to flee. The days that followed were tense. I sent my agents to every corner of the province, gathering intelligence on troop movements, supply lines, and political alliances. I also began to stockpile grain and other essential goods in hidden warri houses, preparing for the possibility of a siege. And then, the news came. The rebel forces had captured the capital. Crown Prince Yun had been executed, and Prince Ning had declared himself the new emperor. The war was over, but the chaos had just begun. That I received a letter from Wei Ruolan a few days later. It was brief and cryptic, written in the lotus blossom code we had developed. Come to the capital. The new emperor is interested in meeting you. I read the letter twice, my heart pounding. The new emperor. Prince Ning. The man who had led a rebellion against the throne and won. He was interested in meeting me. It was an opportunity beyond my wildest dreams. But it was also a danger. Prince Ning was known for his ruthlessness. If he perceived me as a threat, he would have me executed without a second thought. That I made my decision. I would go to the capital. But I would go prepared. I would bring with me a detailed report on the province, its resources, its people, and its officials. I would offer my services to the new emperor and demonstrate my value. And I would ensure that I had a way out if things went wrong. I said goodbye to Lianxiang and my agents. I left them with instructions to maintain the network and to keep me informed of any developments. And then I set out for the capital once more. The city had changed since my last visit. The streets were quieter, the tension had been replaced by a wary calm. The soldiers were still everywhere, but they were now the soldiers of the new emperor. The people were cautious, uncertain of what the future held. That I went to the purple bamboo courtier road. Wei Ruolan was waiting for me, her face serene but her eyes sharp with excitement. Welcome back, she said. I have arranged for you to meet the emperor tomorrow. He is very curious about you. Curious, I asked. Or suspicious of both, perhaps, she said with a thin smile. But that is to be expected. You are a woman who has built a network that rivals mine. He wants to know if you are a threat or an asset. And what should I tell him? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Tell him that you are a loyal subject who wishes to serve the empire. Tell him that you have information that could help him consolidate his power. And whatever you do, do not mention my name. I am not ready to be publicly associated with you. I understood. Wei Ruolan was still playing her own game, and she did not want to reveal her hand to Early. I was a pawn in her larger strategy, but I was also a player in my own right. The next morning, I was escorted to the imperial palace. It was a vast complex of halls and courtiers guarded by armed soldiers and eunuchs in silken robes. I was led through a series of corridors and chambers, each one more ornate than the last, until I finally reached the throne room. The new emperor, Prince Ning, was a man in his early 40s, tall and lean, with a sharp face and cold, calculating eyes. He was dressed in robes of gold and crimson, and he sat on the dragon throne with the confidence of a man who had seized power by force. He looked at me as I approached, his gaze sweeping over me with clinical detachment. Shinju, he said, his voice low and commanding. I have heard a great deal about you. They say you are the most powerful woman in the provinces. A merchant of information, a broker of influence. Is that true? I am a woman who seeks to serve the empire, I said, bowing low. If my skills are of use to your majesty, I am honored to offer them. He studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. I like you, Shinju. You are direct. You do not grovel or flatter. That is in a woman. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine. Tell me something. What do you know about the officials in this province? Who can I trust, and who should I eliminate? It was a test. If I gave him the wrong answer, I would be eliminated along with the officials I named. But if I gave him the right answer, I would prove my value and secure my position. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I named the officials who were corrupt and disloyal, the ones who had secretly supported the rebels. I named the officials who were honest and capable, the ones who could be trusted to serve the new regime. I gave him names, details, evidence. When I finished, he sat back, a look of satisfaction on his face. You are as good as they say. I will have those corrupt officials arrested. And I will reward those who are loyal. He paused. What do you want as your reward, Shinju? I want the freedom to continue my work, I said. I want to serve the empire as a broker of information, a source of intelligence. And I want the protection of your majesty, so that no one can ever harm me or those who serve me. He nodded slowly. Granted. You will be given a seal and a title. You will be known as the Lotus of the Empire. And you will report directly to me. I bowed again, my heart racing. I had done it. I had secured my future. I had risen from nothing to become one of the most powerful women in the empire. But I did not celebrate. I knew that power was fragile, and that the game was far from over. I had enemies now, both within the court and beyond. And I had to be careful to keep them at bay. As I left the palace, I thought about everything I had accomplished. I had escaped a life of servitude and humiliation. I had built a network that spanned the empire. I had formed an alliance with a powerful broker of influence. And I had won the favor of the new emperor. I was no longer the powerless wife of a disgraced official. I was no longer the woman who had been thrown into the river. I was Shinju, the Lotus of the Empire. And I was just getting root. Chapter 6. The seasons turned, and the empire began to heal. The new emperor, Prince Ning, proved to be a capable and ruthless ruler. He purged the court of his enemies, replaced corrupt officials with loyalists, and consolidated his power with a firm hand. The succession crisis faded into memory, replaced by the quiet, grinding work of governance. I remained in the capital, my position secure. The title of Lotus of the Empire had given me a measure of protection, but I knew that true security came not from titles, but from the network I had built. I continued to expand my reach, sending agents to every corner of the empire, gathering intelligence on everything from grain prices to political conspiracies. I reported directly to the emperor, and he valued my services. But as the months passed, I found myself thinking about the past. The Ling Manor. The cold water of the river. The years of servitude and humiliation. I had come so far from that life, but the memories still lingered, like shadows in the corners of my mind. One evening, I received a letter from Lianxiang. She had remained in the province, managing the Clea, our water pavilion, and overseeing my network there. The letter was brief and to the point. Mistress, I have news. The Ling Manor has been sold. The new owner is a merchant from the south. Lady Jiang has been taken in by a distant relative, but I hear she is not doing well. She has fallen ill, and there is no one to see for her. I read the letter twice, my emotions a tangled knot. Lady Jiang, my mother-in-law, the woman who had tormented me for years. She was old, sick, and alone. The family she had so fiercely protected had crumbled around her. Her son was dead. Her wealth was gone. And now, she faced the end of her life with nothing. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt the cold, bitter triumph of justice served. Instead, I felt something else. Something I did not expect. Pity that I set down the letter and read out the window. The capital was quiet, the streets lit by the soft glow of lanterns. I thought about Lady Jiang. She had been a cruel woman, sharp-tongued and quick to humiliate. She had treated me like a servant, like a burden, like an inconvenience. She had stood by while her son tried to sell me to an old man. She had watched as I walked out of her house with nothing. But she had also been a product of her world. A world where women had no power except through their husbands and sons. A world where kindness was a weakness and cruelty was a survival instinct. She had been vicious, yes. But she had also been trapped. I thought about my own journey. I had been trapped too, in my own way. Trapped by my love for a man who did not deserve it. Trapped by my fear of what would happen if I left. It had taken drowning in a river, literally, in the memory of my past life, to break free. And now, I was free. Truly free. I had power, influence, and the means to protect myself. I had built a life that was entirely my own. I made a decision. The next morning, I sent a letter to Ling Yufeng. I asked her to find Lady Jiang and offer her a place in one of my properties. A small house with a garden, a few servants to see for her, and a small allowance to live on. It was not a grand gesture. It was not forgiveness. I was not sure I could ever forgive the woman who had made my life a misery. But it was mercy. And mercy, I had learned, was a form of power in its own right. Weeks passed. I received a letter from Ling Yufeng, telling me that Lady Jiang had accepted my offer. She was living in a small house on the outskirts of the city, read for by a maid and a CK. Ling Yufeng reported that Lady Jiang was in poor health, but that she was comfortable. She asked about you, Ling Yufeng wrote. She wanted to know why you would help her after everything she did. I told her that you are not the kind of woman who lets hatred consume her. She did not say anything. She just cried. I read the letter and felt a strange sense of peace. I had not done it for Lady Jiang. I had done it for myself. I had done it to prove that I was not the woman I had been. I had done it to close the door on the past and step fully into the future. But the past had a way of lingering. A few months later, I received word that Ling Yufeng had fallen ill. The news struck me like a physical blow. Ling Yufeng had been with me from the beginning. She had helped me escape the Ling Manor, she had followed me into exile, and she had become my most trusted ally. She was more than a servant, more than a friend. She was family. I traveled back to the province immediately. The journey was long, but I did not stop to rest. I pushed myself and my horse, driven by a fear I had not felt since I had stood on the bridge, looking down at the water. When I arrived at the Clear water pavilion, I found Ling Yufeng in a small room on the second floor. She was lying in bed, pale and thin, her eyes closed. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin was hot to the touch. Ling Yufeng, I said softly, sitting beside her. She opened her eyes. They were cloudy with fever, but she recognized me. A weak smile crossed her face. Mistress, she whispered. You came. Of course I came, I said, taking her hand. You are the most important person in my life. I would cross the empire for you. Tears welled in her eyes. I am just a servant, mistress. I am not worth such trouble. You are not a servant, I said firmly. You are my partner. My friend. My family. And I will not let you go. I summoned the best physicians in the province. I paid them generously to do everything they could. I sat by Lianxiang's bedside for days, holding her hand, talking to her, telling her stories about our time together. Slowly, she began to recover. The fever broke, and her color returned. The physicians were amazed. They said it was a miracle that I knew it was not a miracle. It was love. The love of a woman who had been given a second chance and who refused to let anyone she read about slip away. That when Lianxiang was finally well enough to sit up and eat, I told her about Lady Jiang. I told her about the small house, the servants, the allowance. I told her that I had chosen mercy over revenge. Lianxiang listened, her eyes wide with surprise. Mistress, she said, you are a better woman than I am. I would not have been able to do it. Perhaps, I said. But I have Ned that holding on to hatred is like riding a heavy stone. It weighs you down and makes it hard to move four-way road. I have ride enough stones in my life. I am ready to put them down. She nodded slowly. What will you do now, mistress, now that you have everything you ever wanted? I thought about her question. It was a good one. I had power, influence, and security. I had avenged myself against those who had wronged me. I had built a network that spanned the empire. I had everything I had ever dreamed of. But I had also Ned that having everything did not mean having peace. Peace was something you had to find within yourself. I want to keep building, I said. I want to make sure that no one ever has to suffer the way I suffered. I want to use my influence to help women like me. Women who are trapped in mariages they cannot escape. Women who have no power, no voice, no hope. Lianxiang looked at me with admiration. That is a noble goal, mistress. Perhaps, I said. But it is also a practical one. The empire is built on the labor and suffering of women. If we can change that, even a little, we can make the world a better place. I returned to the capital a few weeks later, but I did not forget Lianxiang. I sent her regular letters, and I visited whenever I could. She continued to manage the our water pavilion and my network in the province. She had become more than a servant. She had become a leader in her own right. In the capital, I continued my work. I met with the emperor regularly, providing him with intelligence on his rivals and his enemies. I expanded my network into the neighboring kingdoms, gathering information on their political and military intentions. I became one of the most powerful women in the empire, read and respected by everyone who knew my name. But I also used my influence to help others. I founded a school for orphaned girls, teaching them to read and write and manage a household. I established a fund to help women who had been abandoned by their husbands, giving them the means to start their own businesses. I spoke out against the practice of selling wives and daughters into concubinage, and I used my connections to pressure officials to enforce the laws against it. It was not easy. The world was still filled with men who resented a woman's power. I made enemies, and some of them tried to harm me. But I had Ned to protect myself. I had Ned to anticipate danger and neutralize it before it could strike. One evening, I received a visitor at my residence in the capital. It was a woman, young and beautiful, dressed in the robes of a noble lady. She was accompanied by a servant, and she looked nervous. Lady Shen, she said, bowing low. I am Lin Hui. I have come to ask for your help. I invited her to sit and offered her tea. She told me her story. She was the wife of a minor official, a man who had risen in the ranks after the succession crisis. He had been kind to her at first, but recently, he had become cruel. He had begun to beat her, and he had threatened to sell her to a wealthy merchant if she did not give him a son. I listened to her story, my heart heavy. It was the same story I had lived. The same pain, the same fear, the same desperation. That I understand, I said. I have been where you are. And I will help you. I used my influence to have her husband investigated. I found evidence of corruption and abuse, and I presented it to the emperor. Her husband was arrested and stripped of his position. Lin Hui was granted a divorce, and I helped her start a new life. She came to me a few months later, her eyes bright with gratitude. Lady Shen, I do not know how to thank you. You have saved my life. Save your thanks, I said. One day, you will be in a position to help someone else. That is the only thanks I need. It was a small victory, but it was one of many. I continued my work, helping women who had no one else to turn to. I gave them money, shelter, and the means to build their own futures. And I thought about my own future. I was still young, still capable. I had no desire to marry again. I had no desire to be tied to a man, to be controlled by a man, to be used by a man. I had spent too many years in that prison. I was free now, and I intended to stay free. But I was not alone. I had Lianxiang. I had Hongmei. I had Old Chen and Sholei Zhao and all the other people who had joined my network. I had built a family of my own, a family bound not by blood but by loyalty and love. I continued to live in the capital, but I visited the province whenever I could. I walked through the streets where I had once been a servant, and I felt a sense of pride in how far I had come. I visited Lady Jiang in her small house, sitting with her in the garden, watching the flowers bloom. She was too weak to speak much, but I saw a glimmer of gratitude in her eyes. One day, as I was walking through the market, I saw a woman selling flowers. She was old and bent, her hands red with age. She looked up as I passed, and I saw a familiar face. It was the woman who had run the establishment in the pleasure corridor, the woman who had held Lianxiang captive. I stopped. She read at me, her eyes wide with recognition. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. I said nothing. I simply walked on. I had no desire for revenge. I had no desire to cause her pain. She was a product of her world, just as Lady Jiang had been. She had done terrible things, but she had also been trapped by the same forces that had trapped me. I was not the same woman I had been. I was no longer driven by hatred or fear. I was driven by hope. Hope for a better world, a world where women could be free, where they could build their own futures, where they could live without fear. I walked back to my residence, the sun on my face. The streets were filled with the sounds of life, children laughing, merchants haggling, birds singing. It was a beautiful day, and I was alive. I was alive, and I was free. I had survived the river, the pain, the humiliation. I had risen from the ashes of my old life and built something new. Something that was entirely my own. As I entered my residence, I saw a letter on my desk. It was from Lianxiang. I opened it and read her words. Mistress, I have good news. The school for orphan girls has been a success. Several of the girls have already found positions as teachers and clerks. One of them has even been accepted into the imperial examination. She is the first woman to do so in 100 years. I smiled. The letter continued. Lady Jiang passed away last night. She died peacefully, in her sleep. I was with her at the end. She asked me to tell you that she was sorry. Sorry for everything she did. I do not know if you will see to hear that, but I thought you should know. I set down the letter and looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I thought about Lady Jiang, about the woman she had been and the woman she had become at the end. I thought about my own journey, the long and winding road that had brought me to this place that I had been reborn. Not in the literal sense, not in the way I had first believed. I had been reborn in the choices I had made, the person I had become. I had been reborn in the freedom I had found, the family I had built, the hope I had nurtured. I was Shenju, the lotus of the empire. But more than that, I was Shenju, a woman who had survived. A woman who had thrived. A woman who had made her own destiny. And I was not done yet. There was still so much to do. So many women to help, so many battles to fight, so many futures to build that I picked up my brush and began to write. I wrote a letter to Lianxiang, telling her that I was proud of her, that I was grateful for her, that I loved her like a sister. I wrote a letter to the emperor, reporting on the latest intelligence from the provinces. I wrote a letter to the head of the school for orphaned girls, offering to fund a new wing. And as I wrote, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The past was behind me. The future was before me. And I was ready for whatever it held. The lotus had risen from the mud. And it would bloom forever.